All right, Sierra Leone decides 2023. Good evening and a very warm welcome to a special coverage of the launch of the Citizens Manifesto, a groundbreaking initiative that aims to empower the people during this election season. The Citizens Manifesto is a collaborative effort by concerned citizens and organizations who are passionate about making a difference in this election. The goal is to create a platform that allows voters to have a say in the issues that matter most to them. The manifesto is a blueprint for the kind of society we want to live in. It is a call to action for all citizens to unite and make their voices heard. It is a reminder that the power to effect change lies in our hands. Tonight, we're looking at the critical issues raised by citizens for the next government and the responsibilities of the citizens to make a better Sierra Leone. My name is Samuel Weisbangura, and this is AYV on Sunday. All right, good evening and a very warm welcome to AYV on Sunday here on AYV Television on Channel 33, on the STV Channel 399, on Radio FM 101.7, and on all our different social media platforms, especially the AYV News Facebook page. There you have the opportunity to be part of the conversation. As always, we do solicit your views. Share them with us, but again, we make a plea. Tailor your comments to the issues being discussed. And tonight, we're looking at the Citizens Manifesto, whether or not that will influence the political parties' manifestos that would be launched anytime soon. And as always, we'll bring people who are in touch with the issues. On my panel tonight, I have Siraji Rollins Kamara, who is a member from the National Publicity Wing of the Opposition All People's Congress Party. Honorable Siraji, good evening and welcome. Good evening. All right, I have Andrew Lavali, who is the Executive Director for Institute for Governance Reform, the organization that actually put this together. Andrew, good evening and welcome to.
Good evening, Samuel. Good evening, listeners and viewers.
All right, I have one of the communication strategists at the Ministry of Information and Communications, Imran Sillah. Imran, good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, all. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, gentlemen, just before I asked for your precursory remarks, let's go back to the launch of the manifesto. Let's quickly join Ronald Morovia, who witnessed the launch and filed in this report.
Employment, would they ask Papa government for making sure that all youths, please, and publish assets declaration.
Snippets of priority demands from citizens from district and regional level for the next government with almost 2 months to the country's general elections. The Citizens Manifesto was put together by district-wide verification and consultation, ranking 6 demands from citizens that involved 2,400 participants. While outlining the demands of citizens, the manifesto also demanded commitment from citizens towards nation building. Road infrastructure was top of the policy priority, with demand for 50% employment opportunities for young people in the country, while environmental protection, not paying bribe to public officials, and not building on authorized locations were key among the commitments made by citizens.
The number one priority for the Citizens Manifesto, and it's good for the media to hear that, is 50% employment for young people. That's what the citizens of Sierra Leone are saying. 50% of employment for young people to be featured into party manifestos.
Prices down. We all know what we are going through, the economic challenges and the rising price of living. And so that's scored 19.7%. And citizens talked about water, not just water, but access to clean water. And that's amounted to 20%. And then road infrastructure, which is building networks between districts, between communities, accounting for 24.9%.
Director of Research and Policy for the Institute for Governance Reform, Dr. Frederick Mokomokale, attributed the failure to achieve previous demands to lack of service delivery.
The reason why the commitment focuses on governance issues as opposed to policy issues is because these failures lie at the heart of service delivery. The failures that we see in terms of light, in terms of water, in terms of road.
The Republic of Ireland was key in providing support to the development of the manifesto. A representative from the Ireland Embassy commended the commitment by citizens to enhancing nation building.
The manifesto also comprises citizens' commitments that promote positive behaviour, meaningful citizenry, compliance with the rule of law, and solicit support for government to effectively deliver on its mandate. We can see an important focus outlined in the document on the responsibility of citizens in respecting the environment and promoting peaceful messages.
Another notable demand that cuts across districts and regions is the introduction of traffic lights to remove police officers from the streets as a means to minimize corruption. The manifesto provides political parties with the demands of citizens for the next 5 years, while also giving their commitment to supporting development and transformation. Ronald Jomorovia, AYV News, Freetown.
All right, many thanks indeed to Ronald J. Morovia for putting that story together, the launch of the Citizens Manifesto by the Institute for Governance Reform. Andrew, I'm going to start off with you for obvious reasons. And just before we get into this Citizens Manifesto, let's go back to the 2018 Citizens Manifesto that was launched. What's your assessment with regards to the issues that were raised by citizens and whether or not government took them on board? And in terms of service delivery, like you mentioned, that it has always been a challenge. Where would you put the 2018 Citizens Manifesto?
I think we made success. In the first place, we've introduced a culture. I think this is really a novelty in Africa, where Sierra Leone, we're becoming a place where democracy is becoming a movement where citizens and their leaders sit and decide at elections time how they can move forward. And too often, before 2018, the conversation has always been around political parties, putting policy proposals together for citizens.
Right.
It was in 2017, with support from the UK government, we decided to no, citizens have a role to play. And given the sharp ethno-regional divide in Sierra Leone, and given Sierra Leone parties are normally criticized for not having a distinct, philosophical divide. So it's more around ethno-regional ballots. So we said to ourselves, it is good for us to increase policy-based voting, because one of the ways of making election meaningful is not when people vote in relation to, I'm going to vote for this person because this person is my brother or my sister, with the hope that that person can improve my lot. But how do we ensure that elections become a moment when we decide who is going to fix electricity, who has a better idea for roads, for fixing the economy? So the movement started in 2018. And 2018, we had 7 broad demands. Number 1 was on women. How do we ensure that 40% of women get nominated on party symbols? And a Citizens Manifesto, let me lay the broad concept. It's not about targeting the party in power.
Right.
It's about targeting political parties in general. So we are saying at the time you are competing, we don't have to wait for you to win election before you prove to us that you're a good party. Prove to us at the time you are competing. So that's why we said in 2018, at the time you are competing, give 40% of your symbols for parliament, for local councils to women. At the time you are competing, give 15% of your symbols to your party ticket to young people. Or at the time you are competing, even before you win election, declare your assets. Make sure you make campaign finances open. The last manifesto commitment then was whoever wins the election. We said whoever wins the election, which was the 7th commitment, make sure you dedicate 20% of your budget to education, 20% of your budget to health, repeal the seditious libel law, repeal the death penalty. So those are the big campaigns at the time. So we wanted this, we achieved this. Of course, we did not achieve 40% symbol allocation. I think it was just 3-4 years down the line.
Right.
We're now having about 30% quota for women. We did not achieve asset declaration in the true sense of what we actually meant. By asset, yes, we mean asset publication. We achieved 20% budget allocation to education. As a matter of fact, we actually achieved 22%. We achieved some bit in health. So we had wanted this, we achieved this. So that's why in developing this manifesto, we learned quite a lot from what went well in 2018 and what can we do better this time. I think one of the things that we did not do so well was how do we ensure that political parties fully integrate the Citizens Manifesto into their plans. Of course, there was some degree of integration in the SLPP manifesto, in the APC manifesto, NGC actually developed a compact. We said this is what is going to be between our party and citizens, and largely following the Citizens Manifesto prescription. I think what we did not do in 2018 was to ask ourselves, we are making all of these demands of political parties. What are we going to do? Because it actually takes two to tango. So what are we going to do as part of that compact, part of that social contract?
So the demand was just on the government side?
Yes, all 7 demands on governments. And, normally it has to take one of us on the streets of prison that becomes minister, that becomes, president.
Right.
So, but we believe that culture shift, I think that was an erroneous belief, that culture shift just have to come from political parties. I think it was in this manifesto, that is the biggest shift that has happened, where citizens are saying, we can do something, we commit to making this culture shift, but we want you to do X, Y, Z as well.
All right. Siraji, at the time of the launch of the Citizens Manifesto in 2018, the APC was in power. And like Andrew mentioned, your manifesto captured some of the things citizens demanded at the time. Now, with regards implementation and achievement, Andrew has just gone through the 7 broad demands that were made by citizens, and some were achieved, and some we did not achieve as a nation. Where would you put the 2018 Citizens Manifesto in terms of the demands that were made by citizens, the realities on ground, and the achievement?
Thank you very much. And of course, it was done in 2018 with the expectation that we continue governance, but that did not happen. And the baton was passed on to the SLPP. And so more or less we became like the observers watching the stage. And why we are so, because the SLPP deliberately removed us from governance. Because what I understand by governance is about the ruling government and the opposition. But when they kick off, they started doing things. When I was in Parliament, and they brought the free quality education, and everybody will testify. I debated to it, and I spoke to the motion that this is very good. And why it was so? Because I said, President Nkrumah came with the free healthcare, and it benefited all Sierra Leoneans, women and lactating mothers and what have you. I said, so if President Bio would come with free education, I said, that's a relief to. It's not just SAP people going to school that will benefit. Okay, so we started on that platform. Then all of a sudden, some of us were removed, from Parliament, and we started seeing other things. So at the end of the day, the APC party that will have become like a critiquing agent, was shoved, and we are pushed off the stage, and so we had to observe. So for me, I follow the much trumpeted quality education, and I would have loved to modify it, But if we can assess it now, we say yes, it was a good initiative, but the methodology and the process they went through, was inadequate. And
the Citizens Manifesto spoke about, or campaigned, or demanded for its budget on education to be 20%. And now we're at 22%. So let's speak to the budgetary allocation. That was achieved.
Well, you can say that, but we also want to look at if it was achieved, is it all the facets of education that benefited? Now, I will tell you, primary and secondary school educations will enjoy tuition-free education, some books or what have you, but you go back to the university, the fees were quadrupled, in some cases we are double. So I wonder what the government has done in terms of the citizen perception survey and the rest of it to see if actually it's incompatibility. Because you cannot say you allotted 22% of the budget, but practically we are not seeing the effects, And I'm telling you, we'll see very good results somehow from the WASC, but when you go to university, it's a challenge still, All right. Yeah, so I would say it's a good thing that they attempted to do that. But again, when we want to assess, is it that we just say because it was done, but what are the results?
That is just one out of the 7 items. So the issue of the expulsion of the criminal libel law, that was also one of the demands. assets declaration publicly, though.
Yeah.
Campaign financing.
And as a civil society
30%
activist before,
APC.
I would say we've been advocating for the seditious libel to be expunged. And of course, I would say that was good, but we cannot have that expunged and we still bring cybercrime, alongside that. I think this is what we want to see. If you try to remove the death penalty and the seditious libel, where do we have cybercrime? You look at people are languishing in prison for what? Okay. LAJ and other people, what have they done?
All right.
So I would say the thing is, of course, I've been into the shoes of my brother Andrew. I know how it is. The motive of some of like him and other people is really very good. But sometimes we, the politicians, we look at a good material and do. You
see things from a different lens.
Yeah, that's it. So, yes, for me, if I want to wear his cap now as a civil society activist, definitely it's always a good document. But once it comes off the desk of the civil society, it goes to the politician.
So you the politicians.
It's a different thing altogether. Maybe that's why I would say it's not just launching it, but to police it.
Yes, we'll come to look at this.
And see how we interface into the implementation.
Let me quickly ask Imran about the demands of citizens in 2018. And mentioned the 40% allocation of symbols to women. That did not happen. Public declaration of assets. That did not happen. Campaign financing. We're still struggling with PPRC. Of course, budgetary allocation to education was a pass. Expulsion of the criminal libel law was also a pass. And now we've also seen that 30% quota law for women being passed by Parliament. So with all of these things, where does the SLPP see the things that were not achieved, as a government, especially the fact that citizens demanded them?
Thank you very much, Samuel. I feel very excited, and that's an understatement.
Why?
Excited because we have seen civil society organizations come together as a follow-up of what they did in 2018, talking to citizens, making sure that political parties understand exactly what the mood is, right? And that mood can best be captured in our manifestos. So that gives me a great deal of pleasure. Second, I think for the very first time since we started this conversation as we approach the June elections, we are beginning to see civil society organizations setting the tone, right, for this conversation moving forward. Prior to now, it was all you would get was criticisms, dombolo, confusion from the opposition. Now, citizens and civil society organizations are forcing us to come and talk about the issues, right? That is what gives me comfort, because I have always maintained, for and on behalf of government and my political party, the Sierra Leone People's Party, that we would rather have a debate on the issues, key critical issues that borders on national development, on education, on healthcare, on infrastructure, on energy, and many more, yeah? Because that is what would inform citizens ultimately, about half of the population of this country, to make up their minds as to who to vote for. So we should be talking about policies, we should be talking about plans. What we have seen continually from the opposition is no policy, no plans, nothing whatsoever. The only sense we get as to what they would like to do if they have an opportunity was told to us by Samoa Kamara that they would take us back to 1961, whatever that means, yeah? And so civil society organizations have now come together to say, look, let us set the tone for this debate. And so I would like to congratulate them for this work, because that is where the conversation needs to be around, and that is what we should be talking about. So if you look at the manifesto itself, it goes back to 2018 and some of the commitments right, that citizens made in terms of what they would expect political parties. I mean, if you have an opportunity to serve as to what to do, yeah. And as he said, that there were 7 demands. It was about leadership and commitment, political will to fight corruption, equitable distribution of resources, ensure at least 40% women's representation, 15% youth representation, 5% persons with disability, increase in citizens' share of mineral resources, public asset declaration, transparency in campaign financing, legal commitment to a series of socio-economic and political targets, including right to food and housing, equity in the distribution of resources. My only disappointment in this 2023 Citizens Manifesto is the fact that even though it acknowledges that some of what citizens wanted, right, to see happen within this period have been realized, they did not mention exactly. So this is an opportunity for me. So when the Citizens Manifesto in 2018 talked about 20% commitment to education, this SLPP-led government, we have gone 2% better. And so we're now talking about 22%, right, of this country's budget committed to education. When they requested that a government should do 20% commitment of its budget on healthcare, we took it from 6 to 12%. And so we are making progress on those. If you go to our manifesto, we made a clear commitment about women's participation, and we now have a law to that effect.
But that was not achieved. I mean, as a political party, 40%.
It could not have been.
It could not.
That was a responsibility of the previous administration, and they failed.
No, as a political party, because
as a political
these
party,
were demands to the political party that we need this 40% allocation of symbols to women.
It was a commitment, right? But and this is a commitment that is going to outlive President Bill. And so what we have done is to make sure it is now law, and that no other government from whatever political party would not have the powers to overturn it, except you were to go back to Parliament. On the issue of the declaration of assets,
publicly,
yes,
it was only Mohamed Kamayema Mansare who did it.
So, well, I wouldn't like to go down that path, but when
he's on record for doing it, no other politician did it.
Yeah. And then ended up doing something else completely different.
No, we're not talking about the case.
You don't want to get me started on that. Anyway, so the law as it stands right now is quite clear, right? That there needs to be a declaration of assets. The law does not say it has to be public. So there is a lacuna. It does not either prohibits. There is a lacuna there. What I would like to see is more engagement from civil society organizations, advocating, making sure that it becomes part of the ACC Act, right? And there's still time to do that. I would like to see more civil society involvement and engagement. Look, one of the things we have also done as a government is to make sure we create that dialogue between civil society organizations and government. And so for which there's a forum which has been headed by the Vice President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, which time and again engages civil society organizations, making sure that their views are captured, right, and taken into consideration. Now on the distribution of what you call revenues from mineral resources, before 2018, I think it was 0.01% from the Mines and Minerals Act of 2009. And then we...
For community development.
Precisely, from 0.01% to 1%. But that was never done in all the years of APC in government. What we have done is to make sure that for the very first time, those communities are now receiving their due. So we know that last year they received about 5 billion, and this year, just a few weeks back, in Tonkolili district, His Excellency the President was there, and they received 20 billion leones as community development fund. In taxes and royalties paid just for King Ho last year, it was $9,700,000 US that went into government coffers, right? Well, consolidated revenue. And so you understand why we have been able to do the things we have done on healthcare. As I speak today, the president was in Pujon district in a particular town that have not recorded a maternal mortality death in years. Yeah, that is because of our efforts on maternal mortality, and those data and statistics are there.
Let me hold you there, Andrew. Imran, sorry. Just before now, Andrew, we get into this 2023 Citizens Manifesto. I would like us to take to have a better understanding of the demands from citizens and what are citizens' commitments in this short video. Then we'll come right back. All right. There's a technical glitch there. We still have to call for the full video where citizens make the demands and their commitment as well. We still have to go for that. But just whilst we continue to, our technicians try to put that together, let's quickly bring in Andrew. Andrew, first off, we apologize to our audience for that. But let me take you. Let me get your take. The development of this 2023 Citizens Manifesto. Give us a brief overview how the process was and how were citizens involved in it.
It's quite an elaborate process, and I think Siraji and Imran, you should first and foremost thank us because we've actually done the legwork for you. We are bringing to the fore, we've already brought to the fore what we really think are the burning issues affecting every community in Sierra Leone. As a matter of fact, political parties should be actually funding this research. But by the way, we should say thank you because SLPP, APC, NGCC4C actually spent half a day in our offices vetting our tools at the time we're developing this. 20, 30 years ago, you will never see this happening in Sierra Leone, where civil society and political parties actually form cooperation to co-create solutions. So, I mean, just like in 2018, we preface the Citizens Manifesto development with a research into what are the priorities. And there are always two forms of priorities. So one is, what is affecting you? What is bothering you? I need water, I need electricity, I need roads, I need food. Then the second priority, which is really the governance issue, how do you think, what do you recommend for some of these problems to be addressed? And with no derogation intended, we know that politicians, if you tell them, you know, I want roads, they will say, no, it's easy, I can fix roads for you. Oh no, I want water. So how many Bowsers do you want? I will give you water. So that's why for the Citizens Manifesto, we back those policy priorities with governance reform initiative. So for example, in Freetown, when we interviewed 2,400 citizens across the country, the topmost priority for Freetown, which was in February, was water. Maybe if we have done the assessment today, given that this is April, a lot of citizens in Freetown will have demanded more water. So for many communities, they're saying, we want the next administration to bring prices down. Freetown is talking about water. If you go to Falaba, 85% of the people of Falaba were saying, we want roads. Bont was talking about healthcare, they were talking about roads. So when you ask citizens, you talk to citizens in the context of poverty, you come up with a list of priorities. But in the context of little, you have to further prioritize those priorities. So that's what we did. So we boiled down those priorities into 6 issues. And then we said to ourselves, we need to do consultations as to how to achieve some of these priorities. So we have a steering committee of 45 organizations, ranging from the Interreligious Council. In fact, the Citizens Manifesto was launched by the chair of the president of the National Council of Paramount Chiefs and the chair of the Interreligious Council. So these are civic leaders that actually lead the development of this process. So the next level was, how do we get citizens in every district to further prioritize? So we did consultation in every district. We brought together 50 opinion leaders. And when we say opinion leaders, we are not just talking about civil society and ordinary citizens.
Right.
We consider police officers, we consider teachers to be citizens as well. So in the consultations we actually saw, we had police representatives, Sierra Leone Labour Congress, Teachers Union, all discussing how the next 5 years will look like. So we looked at 6 we have what we call 6 by 6 by 2026.
Right.
So in the consultation, there was much more conversation on how do we solve these problems. So we proposed 6 things in terms of solutions to the problems. One was how do we make the state effective? So when you look at the MCC ranking, the MCC, which is a Millennium Challenge Corporation, does not rank government by addressing corruption. I would say the level of corruption. They normally rank the control of corruption. What are you doing to control corruption? So in the Citizens Manifesto, we said we need to test the political will of the state, because the meaning of power to many people in Sierra Leone is not about how do I deliver services, but how do I control the state? By control, I mean, how do I make sure Samuel Wise, if I wanted to sit there for 2 days, he will sit there, and nothing will come out of it. So we want the conversation of governance to really be about services. And too often the institutions that are used to effect that are the police. So the first demand for citizens, how do we reduce the interface between citizens and the police? So 2 areas of big interface between citizens and the police are in the traffic and criminal case processing, going to court, processing your case. So we said, okay, let us choose one. So one was traffic from Pujeong to Bo, from Makeni, from Kwenadugu to Makeni. What many citizens were saying is that if we control policing, if we make policing effective, the women in Falaba, for example, were saying, moving my goods from Falaba to Makeni, the cost of transport will reduce. And so then you actually see the correlation between rule of law and economic growth. So it means if the rule of law is effective, household economies will grow. So that's why you can see it to be very simplistic. But when we had young people, women saying, let them police them and introduce traffic lights.
Because I was just going to ask you about the impact. What would be the effects? I mean, getting rid of police officers on the streets and replacing them with traffic lights, how would that affect the ordinary household of passengers?
Yes, it has tremendous effect. I mean, there's quite a number of writings of that correlation between economic growth and the rule of law.
Right.
So the more effective the rule of law, the greater, because it means you can enforce contract. A lot of people will not want to invest in countries where rule of law is not predictable. And one of the areas where a lot of people think rule of law is not really working effectively is policing. And especially at a time when police approval rating has gone down very low. So 2 areas they said, introduce traffic light, and in the events where we have to pay for smooth tires, we have to pay for not having license, let us pay via electronic means. So it can be through Orange Money, Afri Money.
So no direct interface.
No direct interface.
Reduce corruption.
Yes, so in fact, when we went to Makeni, there are people that are saying, in fact, not just for traffic, we want to make payments for many judicial offenses via electronic means. So, and some of those young men were saying, in fact, we want to use some of the monies to increase salaries of police officers. So not that they hate police officers, but they believe that you can make governance effective by reducing the interface between security personnel and citizens. So those were the 2. The third one was asset publication. This was a carryover from the last one, which a number of citizens believe is still an unfinished business. The fourth one, which in all consultations came out to be number 1, is young people. So the next administration, citizens are saying, the next administration, we want the next administration to achieve 50% of youth employment. So there was a lot of conversation around drugs, around kush, the intake of all of that being attributable to the lack of jobs. So we want APC and SLPP to actually reflect on this in their manifestos to see what are the policy proposals. How are you going to create jobs for young people? Is it in electronics? Is it in agriculture? Is it in fishing? What are the strategies? And we would like to see debate on things like that on platforms like AYV. Then the last 2, the 5th and the 6th were around national cohesion. We mentioned national cohesion in the last manifesto. We think it's still an unfinished business. So 2 proposals on national cohesion. One is even distribution of appointments. No region should get above 30% of appointments in the next administration, and no region should get below 30%, below 15%. No region should get above 30% and below 15% of appointment. And the fourth one is, the last one is to make whichever party wins to go to parliament, the executive of that party should be paid from the consolidated fund. We realized that the PPRC had earlier proposed this to parliament.
The executive members of the political party,
the executive,
not just members of that party.
Not just members of the party. And why is that? When one party is in power, the other party is preoccupied with bringing that party down. So what citizens are saying, let us all be part of the national cake. So how do we ensure we minimize the division, we minimize the contestation, we increase cooperation, and let there be effective conversation on how we move forward. So those are the 6 demands. So we know that if you do this, we can address water, we can address electricity, we can address. So this was a circuitous route to say, address education, address water by making policing effective. Then we have 6 other demands from citizens.
Just before we get to the commitments of the citizens, let me ask Honorable Siraji. Andrew has gone through 6 of the demands that us the citizens are making that we want you, the political parties, to take on board. We want when you win, you have to take the traffic officers out of the streets and replace them with traffic lights. And when we want to pay traffic offense fines for traffic offenses, we have to do so electronically. You have to cut. You have to create 50% employment for us, the young people. Saying you also have to evenly distribute appointments by region. So, one region will not get more or less. And asset declaration publicly. Now you have a presidential candidate, he should come and declare his asset publicly. Citizens are now demanding. And if APC wins, you have to be paying SLPP's national executive members from the consolidated fund. Are these things that the APC would love to consider, especially as you prepare your manifesto?
Yeah, I think, let me also commend Andrew, and maybe I did not do that because I was part of the civil society field, and more or less most of these points are not strange to me. So maybe I will start from the last point, promoting national cohesion and increased cooperation among political parties. Definitely, I think, just as we believe that politics or governance is continuity, so we believe that the national cake should be shared by all. So you can be the government of the day, but you also need the opposition to put you on your toes. So in the event we have a situation wherein members of the national executive in opposition are receiving salary from the national cake, I think it behooves them to come up with meaningful and tangible contribution to making things good for the ruling government. You see, as I think what IGR and others are doing now is to project the nation to start to vote on policies and issues. Not just to vote, oh, that's my brother because he wears red, and what we've been seeing over time, that was what we have, and I think we should move from there. And the traffic light and traffic offense payments, I think they fall under the same category. For me, to replace traffic police with lights is not enough because the traffic lights are just there to control, But we also have traffic wardens. So I ask the police, what are you doing? In most places, in most intersections, you see a set of traffic warden, you see a set of policemen. I said, no, we can't have these people. And now we are thinking of recruiting more police. We said we should remove the police from the traffic and bring them to general duties and other things.
So you agree with the citizens?
No, definitely. But we think we have to modify it. Go ahead. Another thing, payment of fines is not just that. The fines are huge, and that's where the compromise comes in. Because if you say, I came from church yesterday and I packed just like 5 minutes to check for orange money. And the warden...
Where you are not supposed to park.
Yes. And that is it.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? The guy clamped me. I met him clamping the vehicle, and he was about to give me 250,000 receipts and whatever. Fine. And I told him, please, I said, this is an emergency. I need to make a call. And he listened. But definitely, I want to continue to commend the warden. There was a time I have a Mercedes-Benz, and I never knew that the tire was so flat. But these guys have technical eyes, to see this fault. The police, the guy halted, but he has already stopped somebody. They were doing general checks. But he also saw my tire just passing, and he stopped me. I said, why is this guy stopping me? So I went further to park. Then this police lady said, that's stop. That's why I parked, the warden. I said, maybe your license. I said, why? I said, your license will expire tomorrow. Maybe that's why he stopped. I said, he cannot stop me because my license expiring tomorrow. So the police stood there with me. She could not tell me what was could be until the guy finished with that guy and came to me and said, turn your car, you have smooth. I said, come and see. And I felt ashamed, And for me, the wardens are very, very more proactive in seeing faults on vehicles than the police. So for me, that's another point. Do we duplicate the police and the warden? Traffic police and traffic wardens? One has to give way. Secondly, the fines are huge. You don't put on a belt and say 400,000. And in the process, believe me, you don't have the 400,000. You don't want to you come and compromise. And when you look at it, okay, let me give 150, 100 or 200. The police will accept it and will be comforted because you don't have the 400. So maybe we also have to see reason to reduce the fines. Let them be payable fines, like you overspeed in a school zone or somewhere. In fact, why do we have we have two-way lane? Government has provided these roads, like you drive by IMAX going up, and you are on the right, on the slow lane, and all of a sudden you come by Orange, you see a fleet of cars parked there, and they don't clamp them, and now they started to slow down the traffic, So these are the things we also do. We place traffic police or wardens elsewhere. You don't need to.
So these are the consequences of having the police on the streets. You
also, we don't even need speed bumps. Maybe you have the warden. They know this is a 5 miles per hour area. In fact, we are suggesting that, just like we have this top up for EDSA, what have you, each traffic warden will have one. So in the event you drive Andrew's car, and I'm fined 100,000. You are given allowance to pay, but most times they tell you that you have to pay on the spot.
Demand.
On the spot. This is a whole thing we are thinking that we have to take this issue to Parliament.
I hope this features in the manifesto.
Yes, they are coming out clearly. So if we are not there, I will not discuss them here now. So maybe so that's the 2 point. On the creation of assets.
Yes. Publicly.
That is publicly. In fact, if I would say it should be bold, underline, italics, it has to be boldly, it has to be done publicly. But most often what we've seen, it has been a lip service. But my question maybe to Andrew will be, what will be the consequence if somebody does not? Now we are ridiculing
Kamarima.
Yes, for the fact that he did, however he did it, I think we have to make sure that everybody does that.
Is that a commitment that the APC presidential candidate will declare
again, let me say, is it about APC? It's about national. Right. We have to look at it. Is it because when you start to look at it, that's why maybe I would definitely want to toe the line of the civil side, because we have to create a level ground wherein it's neither green or red.
Right.
So if it is a demand, you don't say because APC is my party, they should not do that, and I expect SNP to do that. And if the SNP was shouting at APC for not doing that, and they have also spent 5 years have not done that, then it's like a ping pong on a chessboard. So what are we saying? It has to be a national policy. So which is a national policy, whether it is green, red, or move that comes to power, it has to be a
policy that will not come into force until after the elections, if at all it's going to come into force.
50% of youth employment for me personally and the party, this is something we believe in. It has to be done. It's not just about youth employment, but what the type of employment we are talking about. We are not talking about having 50 youth to wash cars for people only to get their daily bread. Let's get them gainful employment. They come from universities. If you do a survey, I'm a friend of most of these Okada guys, you will see that some of them, they have higher diploma. They have the NCTV, they have degrees, but no jobs. And we are proposing that, for the banks, normally, the banks close to the public at 2 or 3 o'clock. So can we have some students at these universities come and help in these banks or other places after 2 or 3, and maybe they have like stipend, and that is like a work experience for them. So in the event you graduate from university, they know nobody will tell you that you have to apply with 5 years experience or 2 years experience, So, and why these young men are not getting this job? Because of that caveat, that condition they normally live. You should have 2 or 3 years experience. So having them go to school and do like holiday job when I was a young boy.
Are these the things the APC is proposing?
This is what the APC bringing to the table, and I'm sure it's going to be a rosy manifesto. That's why I said, Andrew, you are not far from us. Maybe you interview a lot of APC people, and they may have come up with this point that you are putting up. And political appointment by region. This is in fact for me. This is the most important thing here of all. I don't believe in tribalism or region or what have you. But again, because it has been a factor over years, people get attracted. Even for us in the APC, when we elected Dr. Samuel Akuma's flag bearer, people from the Southeast were advocating that they would want a running mate from that region, So people want a feel of their own, So if they cannot have the president, they don't have the vice president, they can have a minister, And for me, we're also thinking that we need to decentralize governance. Why do we have Minister of Agriculture in Freetown? To do what? Minister of Local Government, Internal Affairs. These are ministries meant to be up country. And when you take a whole ministry, like agriculture, you put it in bowl, meaning that, in fact, like the congestion we have in Freetown will also be solved at the same time. But also, these people not only think that we have a minister, a brother or a sister of our own, but they have the activities of the ministry in their eyes on a daily basis.
So you're saying you're agreeing as a party that when and if the APC wins, the South gets 30%. The East gets 30%.
Yes,
just like the North and the West.
Because for us as APC, we have a rich, enormous human resource nationwide, so we can have them at any time, and we can compare.
So the APC appears to be okay with the demands of the citizens.
But this is practical. This is practical. You know why? Of course, seeing that we don't want to see ourselves like people say, quote unquote, this is a tribal party. No, we don't want to be seen that way. And if we cannot reach the threshold laid by IGR and others, I think we'll come very close that they will say, oh, okay, you guys have a good intention, you have succeeded. But I'll tell you that all districts will have appointees, top appointees in our cabinet.
Imran, the SLPP, if you are re-elected, should get rid of traffic police. You should ensure that you create platforms where fines from traffic offenses will be paid electronically, 50% youth employment, the evenly distribution of appointments by regions, public assets declaration. Executive members, so when the SLPP wins, you have to ensure that you pay the APC national executives from the consolidated funds. I mean, are these things, I know you've formed even your manifesto committee, you're right, you are now in the work, so are these things that will be captured? Are these things going to be captured in your manifesto?
Well, look, clearly, the manifesto is in the works yard now. There is now a committee that is actually looking through a number of issues. We're also going back to the start of 2018 in terms of the achievements we have made and how we can progress on those, deepen and make sure they're lasting. But then how we can also tackle critical issues like inflation, which has been captured by the report, inflation, the economy, because it is tied to, I mean, if you want to talk about youth employment, right, it is directly tied to it. Our government can only do so much in terms of public sector jobs. There has to be private sector growth. And at the moment, we have acknowledged, yes, that there are global challenges which is affecting Sierra Leone. It's not only Sierra Leone, every other developing country, every other middle-income country, even developed countries, right? But how have we been able to stabilize, right, whilst not losing focus as to how we can move forward in making sure that there is youth employment and making sure there is a lot more opportunities in the private sector, because that is what would ultimately, right, take the bulk of the population, number one. Second, when you talk about evenly distribute appointments by region,
yes,
and you hear my brother making a commitment for and on behalf of his party, it feels like Alice in Wonderland, right? And I'll tell you why. If you go back to the data for the APC in government, when Anesbai Kromah came into office in 2007, 68% was a northern cabinet, yeah? And when he did his first cabinet reshuffle, 70%
this is a new commitment the party is making.
I'm coming to it.
Okay.
And so when you make commitments on platforms like these, and then you check that it was only recently that they had a national executive, an opportunity to make it look national in its outlook. Say for CDI at Tunis, everybody was from Makeni, Kamakwe.
Can we talk about the SLPP's commitment to this?
Was from Kamakwe.
Is the SLPP committed to even, I mean, when when re-elected, would you be able to go to the north, give 30% of the northwest,
so it makes you
30%?
Again, one of the things I think civil society organizations are encouraging us to do is not only to make commitments, yeah, but you make commitments as against records and individuals, yeah, because that is what makes you believe, right, that those commitments, people will follow through on them, right? If there's a clear record and a clear pattern, quite clearly suggesting, right, that you have not met no commitments in those areas, you don't even need to be told. It's common sense, yeah, that your national executive should have a national outlook.
Will you meet these?
Government should have a national outlook.
Will you meet these demands?
So let me give you the data now for SLPP. 32% from the south, 30% from the east, 15% from the west, 20%, slightly above 20% from the north. That is what our government looks like. So it is a clear departure. And so when I say, for and on behalf of His Excellency the President and this government and my party, the Sierra Leone People's Party, that we will come good, right, on these requests by citizens, I mean it. Because there's a clear record to suggest that, right? And we cannot do otherwise. We understand that when we talk about national cohesion, it is directly linked. If you talk about distribute appointments by region, you're also inferring, right, that there needs to be national cohesion. You need to make an effort to bring the country together, to hold the country together. And what have we seen more recently? We have seen an agreement, right, between the SLPP-led government and the NGC, led by Dr. Kande Kolayom-Kela, talking about unity for development, national cohesion for development. Yeah, we have seen His Excellency the President bring on board Alpha Khan as presidential spokesperson, but he also doubles as resident minister Northwest. Here's my point. Plenty of other people in Dena SLPP will be for naturally filling the position. It did not need to be Alpha Khan. So there was a clear calculation by His Excellency the President as to why he chose Alpha Khan. Forget about his CV for a minute. Forget about his resume. Forget about the fact that he has a natural gift, right, in doing that job. It was also precisely the fact that he comes from an opposition stronghold, an opposition party. That was why he was brought in. And in talking about national cohesion, we have put together the Peace and National Cohesion Commission. That was a recommendation.
Put together by the government.
Since the war, that was a recommendation. It was on the table. The APC ignored it for 10 years and 8 months and did nothing about it. It took this government, right, the same courage that we took to make sure criminal libel laws were repealed, the same courage that we took to make sure that the death penalty was repealed.
Let me ask you this question on assets.
We have done the same for the National Peace and Cohesion Commission.
Public declaration of assets. Is this something that the retired Brigadier Julius Madabiu is open to? Is this something the SLPP is open to?
Look, 110%.
Forgive me, why I'm asking this question. The APC and the SLPP have always advanced arguments in the form of excuse that it is not, it is, I mean, what the law is saying is what we're doing. We're going to ACC, we're declaring. That is what the law is saying. But the law is also not prohibiting you from coming public. And besides, best practices are now, in terms of accountability and transparency, you score more goals when you do that publicly.
So we had a law which made it okay, right, for there to be seditious and criminal libel laws, right? We had a law which made it okay for the death penalty to exist.
Right.
We knew that there was a lacuna in it and that politicians would use it to their advantage once they have political power. And we have been bold and courageous enough in making sure, right, that we take those laws away from the law book. No other politician would have the opportunity. We would not see another Paulo Bangura, right, Paulo Conte, they clean oil, we then call Napademba Road, saying go clean up. I mean, that is not your job as a minister in whatever capacity. So here's my point. I'm giving.
I think I want to.
Absolutely. You'll have an opportunity. You'll have an opportunity. You'll have an opportunity.
Okay.
So my point is, on the declaration of assets.
Yes.
We need to, like I said earlier, encourage civil society organizations to take it one step forward in making sure that we have a conversation around it. His Excellency the President have never been opposed what was in the law books.
Well, nothing's stopping you.
No, absolutely, absolutely. What was in the law books, right, makes clear provision for a declaration of asset. That is something I think that the SLPP-led government, His Excellency the President, would be more than happy to look at in his second term, making sure that it becomes public. And so for the rest of the other demands made by citizens, traffic lights, absolutely, it makes so much practical sense. And I suspect that the objective is to lessen, right, the contacts between ordinary citizens and the police. Because there's always that potential for conflict. So if you have less traffic police officers, and so what would happen now to the traffic wardens? Because the reason why they were instituted in the first place was to augment and complement the efforts of the traffic police, because by its very nature, the police did not have the manpower to be around every single stop. So that makes so much sense, and I also agree that, I mean, if fines have to be paid, they have to be done electronically. I think in terms of technology, we have to acknowledge that we are getting there. We still have challenges. We still have some ways to go. But it is not inconceivable for us to have a deliberate policy and an approach, right, by us all, right, in making sure that if you have fines to pay, you can do that. And I don't subscribe to the view that the current fines are too much. So if me no wear seat belts, that is very responsible and a recklessness, yeah? When I pay 400,000, next as I sit inside Mutka, the first two I remember, you know, is that I have just paid 400,000 leones. I do not want to be fined another 400,000 leones again, yeah? So those fines would sufficiently, because the essence of fine is like a punishment. It is for you not to repeat that offense again, or for you to understand that, you know, that is wrong.
So what we're saying here, both parties are running with the demands from citizens.
Absolutely. But the ultimate test, when we have those manifestos out, right, we have a record to go with the manifesto. We have an individual who has proven it time and again in his 5 years to go with the manifesto. Because ultimately, I mean, if me go now talk say I sabi dance, I go to a nightclub, let's say and get dancing competition. But if Andrew not know me for dance, so I go there, better not come But if I know say Siragia and a dance man from the morning, you get moves, you get skills. Right? When he stands up and say, I want to be part of the dancing competition, you know, say you get for go fast more. And so the individual, right, plays a part in our manifesto. It cannot be treated in isolation. And I keep saying this, and forgive me for mentioning it one more time. For someone, if we're talking about the economy, inflation, youth employment, and many other things, for someone who has served, right, as financial secretary, as minister of finance, as bank governor, and for decades we have been plagued by the same problems, year in, year out, you can have the most beautiful manifesto in the world. Match that as against the individual.
All right.
There is a deficit.
Let me bring in Andrew again. Andrew, let's go to the commitments that citizens made. Citizens have also made commitment that, I mean, they too have realized that they have a role to play. And so just take us through their commitments.
Yeah, so before going to the commitment, I'm happy that the political parties, it appears as if there is some will to take the 6 points on board. I mean, even though there is some struggle, but what I would like to emphasize, nothing is stopping anyone from declaring assets. So I think, yes, I take your point, Mr. Sillah, that we will continue to influence the legal process for some legal reform to be done. But I think where political will is evident is when we actually have a leader that will say, with or without law, I think our people deserve ethical leadership. I'm not saying it's unethical when a leader does not declare assets, but I think it brings a lot more trust. I'm saying this, when you look at Afrobarometer data, trust levels in public institutions are plummeted. And so what you need for institutions that govern citizens' life to take citizens on board is really when you build trust. I serve on the school management committee. And I know what citizens can do if they are inspired to participate in education. Because from our research, the contribution that citizens are making, just for example, on government flagship education, it way surpasses what government is contributing. So that's where public trust is key in institution. If asset declaration, asset publication is one instrument that can inspire that, I think it's something that is worth trying. If you just Google, say, what is Barack Obama's net worth? Yeah, I just need to say, Siri, what's Barack Obama's net worth? It can tell me. It can tell you that. I think we need to reach that point where our leaders will take the country to that level. We've spoken I think there's quite a lot of demand on automation, which citizens are doing. And it's really on purpose. When they say we want to pay via electronic means. And I want to agree a little bit with what Sirajin was saying about the cost of the fines. Because if we have a police establishment where the incentive is not really how you reconcile those payments to public funds. So if you make the fines too high, you leave room for settlement, for informal settlement. So I think if there is some sense to bring the fines down, you make the payment easier, and you develop a culture of paying, then later on definitely we can increase it. So I on that note, I would just want to return to what citizens are saying. So there's quite a lot that citizens are saying. 6 things. One, on environment. Citizens are saying that number one, we commit ourselves not to throw dirt on the streets anymore. I think it's the president of the Bike Riders Association in the steering committee that was really emphatic about this point. He was saying, he said, I just came from Dubai. That's why I just came from, not Dubai. He said, I just came from Paul Kagame's country. Rwanda. He said, I just came from Rwanda. He said, the thing I saw in Rwanda, he said, it appears as if people are disciplined not to throw dirt on the street. So citizens are saying, we want to be disciplined not to throw dirt on the street. So growing up, Samuel, I know you were too young to remember this. We used to have sanitary inspectors. And believe me, if they see you, selling food stuff without being covered, you're fined. And if you have a certain toilet that is condemnable, they will close it. So you don't need to invest so much into health if you are taking care of sanitation. So citizens are saying that this is a gap in governance, and we are ready to cover that slack. But it will definitely require the state to help that organizing. One of the things we're thinking about is how do we ensure whoever wins elections for us to influence the next development agenda. For us we can actually establish neighborhood watches on environment. Then there's this thing about building illegal, putting illegal structures in areas that they should not exist. We see politicians are afraid, and rightfully so, they should, because they do not have the data that if I demolish this house and the roads get clean or cleared, there will be more people that will vote for me. So there's always this fear that if I demolish this structure, they won't vote for me. So you have, Freetown is becoming like a big slum. So you have quite a lot of buildings. When something happens that is bad in Freetown, it's copied across the country. So you see slum developing in many other cities in the country. So we have spotted this as citizens, and we've committed to see how we can support the government to stop the building of building in unauthorized area. Then putting undue pressure on people, on officials that are serving in justice. So, for example, we normally complain about access to justice being compromised, justice not being effective. But we are the ones who influence the judges. We are the ones who influence the police officers. So we have committed, I wholly hope we take this commitment seriously, to say we cannot put undue pressure to judges. In as much as we'll continue to canvass for due process to be observed by duty bearers, but we'll ensure that on our part, we don't put undue pressure. The fourth commitment on part of citizens is for us, we want to stop paying bribes to police officers, paying bribes to judges, paying bribes. It's really in sync with the third manifesto commitment, stopping to put pressure. And some of the forms of doing that is payment of bribes, or calling your brother, say, I know that was your classmate, he's now a lawyer, can you please influence him to do this? The fifth one, which is really big, and I only hope the political class will applaud citizens for coming up with this initiative, is for us to stop begging politicians. I know when we did the ranking, this was in the pecking order of 1 to 6. This was the sixth commitment. I had to laugh. Why is this coming? Why is this a sixth commitment for citizens? So stop begging politicians for handouts. And too often we cry, our MPs do not go to our communities, but they fear the pressure. I've seen a woman who took Okada from Bo at the time President Bio was doing one of the tours. This lady just went just to be around politicians. And she got something in Kenema, and then she took another transport to Kailao. She went to Daru. She got something. On her way from Daru to Kailao, she had an accident. She lost her limbs. She could no longer beg. So that is how begging politicians have made us vulnerable. There is this belief that if my brother comes to power or my sister comes to power from the same background, they will direct benefits to my community. So this is really a campaign. This is not popular among many citizens. In fact, in the consultation, there are quite a lot of young men and young women that will say, "Una young better." So they believe that the best way to get from politicians is
to ask.
Yes, is to ask, so you to get your direct benefits. And there's a report, Samuel, just quickly. There was a report that we just published two weeks ago. It's really an interesting data from the University of Chicago by James Robinson. So we've put together this appointment. So we're looking at the correlation between appointments and citizens' welfare. So we looked at all 150 appointments by President Bio, 150 appointments by Koroma, for the same positions, down to President Kaba. And we asked, where are these people coming from? Which communities are they coming from? Have these appointments translated into better welfare for those communities? We started looking at data on education, data on healthcare. Is it translated to better welfare? We realized that there is very little correlation between appointments and impact on citizens' welfare. Of course, where there is really no tangential relationship is in electricity. So we realized that for appointment to translate into bigger impact, you actually need a big threshold of appointments. See, it means you need to have like 10 or 15 appointments in one community for that community to change. It means the more we believe in this, the more we go for inequality. It means other communities will not get because of this belief. So that's one. The last one is the use of social media. Citizens committed themselves to stop using social media to promote hate and division in society. So those are the six commitments, and we hope if this becomes part of the development plan of the next government, because I know the new direction development, I think education for development, the medium-term development plan is coming to an end. So we will be campaigning, whoever wins the election, for this to be part of our own fair share of contribution to development, yes.
It's interesting looking at the things that us, the citizens, have committed ourselves to doing, and the issue of accountability, whether or not we would do these things that we've committed ourselves. So I mean, looking at how do we deal with the environment? We say, okay, we need to go to treat again. We don't tell while we treat and clean, and let we sit it clean. Say, okay, lot of bill side. They say no bill save the environment. These are all things that are very much good. I mean, not put on due pressure, but we judge them. Certain say we'll get case who they call if na Imran. I say Imran bro. They say that Imran call for me no.
So talk to Andrew.
They don't arrest how we go through. So we they say now we do that again. We do that again. We not the bribe again. We bribe them police. Then we bribe the judicial officers. Then we okay. So this follow makes a long better. And then here we say we not they do again. And we not the big politician again. So I know call the member of parliament for say maybe King for go bondo or me brother want for married so it's like can let happen. So we don't say we need do it again. And now again the biggest thing, the biggest commitment has to do with social media, with the way things are going. Say we don't want to use social media for spread its message. We don't want to bring sonko in our country. The question is, how do we ensure that these things that we've committed ourselves to, us the citizens, we're able to implement them, we're able to follow up them? Is there a tracking mechanism, Andrew, for stuff?
Yes, indeed. This is the difference between that Citizens Manifesto and this one. The last Citizens Manifesto, we developed those 7 plans, and when there was a change of government, there was not much push to ensure it's being realized. So if you look at the Citizens Manifesto, there is now an implementation strategy. And part of the implementation strategy is really how do we fundraise? And part of the fundraising is how do we influence government, the next government, to see value in this and then fund it? How do we influence development partners? You know, too often, guess how much we spend on cleaning every Saturday, every last Saturday of the month? It was billions going into that. So why can't you spend on the media? So you can just say, AYV, we want you to develop a program on behavior change for citizens. Why can't we spend on developing system, developing neighborhood watch programs? So instead of cleaning, why can't we invest in behavior change so that we don't get the street dirty? So if you go to Guard Street, how do you get the market women interested in ensuring that their own market is clean? So how do we save the next generation? So it's not about this big procurement of buying dump trucks, but how do we invest? You know, if just the funds for just one dump truck, if you invest that in behavior change, it will serve a city, a whole community. So that's what the Citizens Manifesto is saying. So we understand the gap in the last one, which was really about follow up and follow through. So this one, that's really, it marks the difference.
All right, Siraji, what are your thoughts around the things we have committed ourselves to? I mean, we're not just putting pressure on you, the politicians and the government, but we are saying we also have our own responsibilities and we must take them up.
And thank you very much. This is the conversation I'm expecting, not to start pointing fingers, as Imran was doing, and I don't want to go back. I think we want to tell people what we believe in doing, because the ills of the SLPP, even the blind will see. So I didn't want to waste my time with that on that. But I don't know how Andrew and others reach out to these people, but maybe they too are in a rush to respond to such. They can take can make the commitment of not littering. But believe me, if you don't see a litter bin after 50 meters, 100 meters, and you keep holding this, you reach a point and you almost think that where do I throw this? What I propose sometime and what we are trying to build in our next set when we are coming to power, first, we want to create a system where the debt will be bought. Like they bought scrap metals, now move around if you see any scrap metal. Whilst we are buying the debts around, it will come a time somebody say, "Who that if we don't?" And they go sell because somebody's ready to buy that. So once we start, because when you look at the cost, these dump trucks and what have you, and the manpower, you send people out, you pay them on a daily basis, on a monthly basis to clear people's mess for nothing. When you start to tell them that we'll buy a kilo at this amount, people go all out to start to look for dirt in the gutters and come to sell. Whilst we are doing that, we regulate that at a certain point, after 6 months or so, we don't want to see any litter bin. But whilst we are doing that, we also place litter bins, and we don't want to see any littering. But whilst we are doing that, we also place litter bins maybe 50 meters apart. At any point you see a litter bin, you have a place to dump that. And every 2 or 3 hours, we have somebody from the municipality or whatever to come and clear that and always create space. We've seen some litter bins around, and they were filled to the brim. For days, they were not emptied. So somebody will just say, person will just try to drop 1, 2, and that's how it gets worse. So on the environment, I think people making comment they will not litter. This I will see it for now as a lip service until we help them with these benchmarks or things we've said.
So you're saying that can only be achieved with the environment.
With the result of the government to help them set up this. As I said, we need to buy the dirt in the first place to clear the garbage. What we have for now. Now we set rules and get litter bins at every point where anybody can. But then we clear them every 2 or 3 hours. Illegal construction. And my constituency 127, where I live, I would call it a peri-urban area, like a village inside town, And why people want to build on top of hills or stones, Unlike other places where you have council flats or locust housing, these locust houses were sold at a time, The poor man cannot own a house. If we want to go rent a house now, somebody will say, you get for pay 20 million and for 2 years. And the person say, for 2 years, where will I get this money? When you don't catch get the money, you say, instead I go pay this more, after 2 I don't get money. You prefer to go find a slum and under the bridge or somewhere and say, let manage. And it's also because our decentralization effort is not effective. We don't need to see people around the street of Freetown are poison when we have bully lands.
But you also have the high and mighty. Constructing houses or erecting structures where they should not.
That's what I'm saying. Why are they doing that? Because they want to live in the city and they don't have the means to pay for those houses. So
even those with the financial might, that's what I'm saying. We've seen many cases we've witnessed in this country where people have gone beyond the green belts and destroying the environment.
Of course, it has been then. That's in fact, it's not an issue with the people. It's an issue with the government, because I remember some places the green belt was like here. Each government will come, and Bob Sin came, he moved the green belt. The APC came, they moved the green belt. This is the fact we have to talk to ourselves, And they keep on moving because of selfish gain. But we want to see that, we need to have a picture of Sierra Leone in mind, not just about the APC. And so that's why maybe once I'm here, I try to guide myself not to just look at an APC focus. That's why I was a bit uncomfortable with Imran, because you want to point things that they are very much guilty of. He even supported the fines, and just like they are levying heavy taxes on the ordinary person. So I don't want to go that way. On judiciary, let me tell you why the people will not stop bribing. In fact, it starts on the police. This case will get this, go funny. They start with that. When I know that this case that I have is not funny, I start to call Andrew. You shall be that man. So we have to be very, very much cooperative in here. We are in. the police should also be responsible in the investigation, even without hearing from the other side. Immediately, in fact, when they go report, first now police, they always get right. Well, they can't complain. When you come, okay, and deny bail, can they let somebody can bail or something like that? Then fear comes around the person. What it is that to cause somebody of a higher level to intervene. You know, so if that level where we have this encounter is where the wrong start. So the police also could be found and wanting it because the police is an extension of the judiciary. So if they say undue pressure, it's because they initiated the pressure. You know, and like when during the FRC, you know, I had some 2 cassettes. You know, I recorded the first recordings or broadcast of the 98.1, and I also had the recordings of Bowie. You know, I was a recording technician. That was my interest. And at the time when they saw me with those tapes, they said, I have subversive documents to overthrow the government. Imagine a police telling me that, you know. So just to have 2 cassettes in your possession is subversive document to overthrow the government. So for an ordinary person, and I want to pay tribute to people like Paul Kamara and AIG Wellington, who's now retired. They helped me in the situation. So in that case, I had to call people like that, you know. So the situation still obtained, you know. So we have to be very much. The police should not put fear in the hearts or minds of people. But immediately they invite you. Hey, if they don't invite you, if you come tomorrow, if you don't come, we'll send warrants. Already, you don't make that person for make you call somebody. You know, we are not novice to this. Even no pay bribe. I was part of the team that voluntarily helped Adi Macaulay, the former ACC. I will put a team, a covert team. People not see they have camera, and we want after this put us and what have you to discourage them from paying tax and bribes, and we succeeded to a large extent. You know, but again, as I say, if you say no pay bribes, okay. You flat tire, you don't have another one person, they said that, and what they do, let's go to the police station. They want to offload every passenger, let's go to the police station. Then we have to change the approach. If you don't want to be paid bribes, do not offload that vehicle. Allow the man to go. That's why I said, let the police or the wardens on the scene start to have this mobile gadgets where they will track immediately. You look at this registration number, you know the owner of the car. There's a telephone number. This car, you are the owner. This car has faulted, so there is a fine of so amount. You know, sometimes we don't live like in the US or UK where you own your car, you drive it. You know, you are the licensed person. Here, somebody will borrow my car or lend my car. Then the event it causes a havoc. When you go to renew your license, they say you have a ticket here. Nobody tells you. So they have to have such things. So when I know that Puda driver, you know, saying chop money, what you will do, you know. If they say, okay, this way. But let me tell you also, even the bikes. Now, in fact, the order of the day today, they take these bikes, when they go to Central, before they are taken at the back, you pay 150. I work with bike riders at New England. You know, some of them go and meet me. I say, I will not go to police to bail because you should not ride in the CBD. And they say, well, I did the money there. I say, well, should not. But sometimes what I do, I help them with some money to go and offset. But once the bike is taken out of the vehicle and taken at the back, it goes to 300, 500, you know. And they never receive those money. So when you're talking about high taxes or high fines, you know that do not come to the consolidated fund. What are we paying them for? You know, so the not paying
begging of you, the politicians.
Begging politician. That is a menace. It permits.
Is it a burden on you?
It has been. You know, in fact, I have to say this sometimes. We joke in our APC group. We say, if you have to go to the party office, you have to prepare. Because, you know, people ask, you know, it happened in all these political parties, you know. But why are they begging? You know, it's 2 ways, you know. Some of them think that a shortcut to getting your daily bread is to beg. And I'll tell you a story. My friend owns a restaurant when he was an American, then he moved to Boston, mixed flavor restaurant. There was this woman who passes by every day begging. She looks strong, you know, could be in her late 40s. But, you know, then I said, okay. I said, come and help my friend to wash the dishes. And every day, but then it's like 12, 15 years ago, we give you $2,000 for transport. At the end of the month, we give you 600,000, but then you have minus eating, and you also take a bowl of rice to take home. Me and the tinapa no go able, you know. But she stood on the street all the time. Yes, they were for me. But you know, one time, because when you go to Bank of Salon, this women's there, they were into Osusu, 10,000 a day. It's a source of income, you know. So it's permeating to the political parties, you know. Hey, bro, they are from now, they guide the office. I said, look, you're from now, they will sweep the steps, you know. So there was a time when Patso was minister, and I told them, they came to Patso. I said, Patso, provide jobs for this men. Let them be like cleaners or messengers in the morning. They come to work up to 12 or 2, they go and sit at the patio. They themselves say, no, I mean, no to this one, we Lord in our party office, no for meeting. They themselves, we are not ready to take jobs. You know, so for them to see, we believe they will not stop begging politicians. They will not stop.
Is it also as a result of the fact that, for example, Siraji is appointed now minister, and Siraji is pocketing all the money because he knows that the only way he has to give back for whatever contract or job is to go back to party office, and the boys then they hail you and then improve it.
Maybe that's another point, and they want to consider next time. Maybe he didn't see that, or he didn't bring it up. But you know what these guys have in mind most times when they say, I'm really put on our attack, I didn't make them. I didn't make them. They don't say Tifo. Yes, I didn't make them. So it seems as if young people, they are celebrating us political criminals, you know, and the money that should be theirs, you know, they will still want to come as underdogs or to fall for the crumbs that fall off the table and start to pay, you know, you give them 15 loans, 20 loans, you think that you are giving them the world. But I tell you, I saw Dr. Jallo, who was Minister of Economic Planning in Tijjani Kaba's government. This guy was running to catch up with a taxi. Then somebody said, by the post office, you know, they said, look, this man, you know, been better, they make a minister, Motuka said, will get. And I said, this is the man we should celebrate.
The issue of social media.
The issue of social media, of course, for me, I don't listen to audio in social media. My time on social media is to learn. If I see people like Imran and you post something, I read to the fullest. And yes, and for me, of course, the Adebayos, the Koma APC, the other guys on the SLPP, I don't even listen. So even when I was abused, one fellow, they said, call him Uri APC, you know. We went to this lady's funeral, what's her name? Zulai. So came in from the mosque, and for this guy, somebody took a picture and said, oh, look at this guy, he has a machine to print party cards. These are criminals. Put it on social media. My mama knows something about politics, we don't like, because I'm not off. You know. But even that, people only told me that that's what he said, because for me, I didn't listen that. When I was removed from Parliament, I went to England. My friend said, Omanbia or Adebayo cost you. And I said, no, cost me. It cost you. I said, I don't listen to him. You know, but this, we call this a keeper generation. These phones were meant to be a blessing, but they are turning to become a curse. You know, for me, like I tell people, like kids, you have the internet here. Ask yourself the question. You don't need a teacher. Ask the question. Go to Google and ask the question. But instead, it is being abused to use voice note to tell people and to tell lies and fabricate stories, you know. And I will not tell you that. In fact, I don't have any 1% countenance on that. Whether, you know, if you don't come up with any good thing, like we have people who make use of it. Ahmed Sise will come from the court or other place and give updates to people. This is what happened to them. These are the things we want to see. But more often than not, even for other people, you know, we see people, former minister, lambasting, you know, it's not good.
Let me bring in Imran. I think it's the previous edition of the show. I also received an audio from one Eunice Bangra from the UK. So we're getting all of this from all over. But Imran, let me hear what you have to say with regards to the demands of the commitment of citizens on the environment, constructing houses in unauthorized areas, undue pressure on judges, they are saying they will stop to pay bribe, they will stop to beg you, the politicians, and because they will not want to keep putting pressure on you, use social media as a platform to disseminate hate and insightful messages.
Well, there's a saying in English language, way to go. I only hope that civil society organizations will find a way to capture how much progress that citizens make on those commitments that they have made, like, I mean, they would do for political parties, right, who form governments, yeah? Because that would help to give an indication as to whether they really meant those commitments or they were just paying lip service. Because if you bring them into a room and ask them whatever questions, they might say a thing or two as to what their commitment would be, but might not necessarily follow up on that. Right. Again, I think the law can force citizens to follow up on those commitments. What do I mean? If we talk about cybercrime, there is a cyber law in place. Just, I think yesterday or over the last few days, a US citizen, age 21, for mistakenly posting sensitive materials, he has been arrested. And that is where they got the evidence from, on social media. And he's now facing very serious charges. Bail have been denied, right? He's in the custody of the state, and he will face trial, right, for leaking those sensitive information. So it is not unsimilar in terms of what we have with our cyber bill. That is a bill that went through Parliament, was approved by partisan approach from parliamentarians. I sat through that process, and the only rejection we had at the initial phase was from opposition parties who thought that they needed to do more consultations with their constituents. And that was a very fair deal. So they had to go back, do those consultations, came back, and the bill was passed in Parliament. I also know that because Sierra Leone, as a country, we do not have cyber experts in law, we relied a great deal on outside source, mainly in developed countries, I think from Norway, US, UK, and those places, right, to help us put together, right, a cyber bill that would go through Parliament. And so they had to look at various countries in terms of what they had, right, for cyber law, right, and that was being used to get the framework right, but then also the content. I mean, it was, we had to capture what was unique about Sierra Leone, right, with our cyberspace, and that was captured and then sent to Parliament. Eventually it passed. And I think that's a responsible way to go, because increasingly we are seeing the cyberspace being used for other things. You know, the cause mamikos, and we, particularly so, with all the incidents that have happened in this country. So we are talking about Makeni, we are talking about Tombo, we are talking about Pademba Road Prison. We are talking about the 8th to the 10th of August. That report has just been released. And quite clearly, it shows that the cyberspace has not been used or was not used for the right reasons. And so we have to find a way to regulate. That is what I mean by the law. The law needs to be a respecter of no man, and people need to be brought to book if they are found wanting, regardless, right, of their political party affiliations. I think it was Andrew who said on an AYV program, there's one of your morning programs, he said, people are happy to break the law and then easily hide under political parties, right? It's an easy thing to do. So you can go and be reckless, irresponsible, broke the law, flout the law, total disregard for the law, and then you can just revert back to a party political posture, and that's okay, right? The moment the law attempts to invite you, right, for what you have done, hey, now politics, yeah? That should not be the case. So for me, I think citizens, if they make those commitments, they have to come good. They have to show that they are committed to the commitments that they have made. But the law also has to be in place in making sure, that if people broke those laws, so on things like not paying bribes, I don't necessarily pay bribes. I mean, that's a posture I've adopted for a very long time. I'll give tips if I want for. Right, but at the moment I feel I'm under pressure for give money, I don't do it. I think the police largely, by and large, are doing a good job. People might have their individual experiences. I have mine.
Yeah.
But I hope that when it comes to, particularly for those who follow up on the reports being made at the police station, making sure that they follow through, right, and make sure that there's a fair distribution of justice. And they have some training to do, particularly also for those who go to courts. Because you can see them now, they don't do all that right up, then they go to court, then they go mess up all thing completely. The English is not correct there. So there's a deficit there, and these are things we have to acknowledge. I mean, how can we train them and make them better? So that at the end of the day, I mean, if they get it right, it helps all of us as Sierra Leoneans. On the judiciary, let me say, I think for the first time, we have made real progress on the judiciary, with the judiciary. We have seen judges now across the country, in districts, resident judges, resident magistrates. The most recent data that we have, I think it was in 2020, which shows out of a total of 800 cases, I think about 477 were concluded, which is about 60%. So the judiciary is getting certain things right? And that is something for us to celebrate. Is there more work that needs to be done? Absolutely. The work, I mean, it never ends. Yeah, from one government to the other, there are always going to be new challenges and new targets to meet, and all the rest of it. And so it should be. But we should put our shoulders to the wheel and be willing to work. One more thing, and that's the note I'd like to end on, Samuel.
Quickly, yeah.
I mean, I understand Siraji's reluctance to go to the past, but let me give a bit of political history here. Yeah, as we're moving towards the 2007 elections, Ernest Bai Koroma made a deliberate effort to break away from the past APC. And when he was campaigning, he did say, this is not new APC. Remember, in 2007, as he was going to the election, he said, this is not new APC. Why? He knew quite clearly, and he was smart enough to gauge the mood, that the old APC of Shaka Stevens and Momo was not the APC he was going to tout whilst campaigning. Otherwise, he would not have won those elections. By whatever means, he would not have won those elections as president of the Republic of Sierra Leone. But because he kept saying, this is not new APC, and he was relatively a new face, people bought into that public relations stunt and exercise, right? And so they voted for him. What is my point? My point is there has to be an acknowledgement. So we might have our manifestos in place, yeah? We might have all of these included in our manifesto. The APC has to come good, right? Because the data and the statistics, which is what I have produced here on this show, quite clearly shows the contrary. And so for citizens to buy into these commitments, right, it has to be matched with the right communications exercise. Otherwise, Andrew talks about trust deficits. We get it all the time as politicians, right? You don't need that in doing a manifesto, and people begin to question that deficit, that gap, and as to whether that individual matches those manifesto aspirations.
All right. Let me run through a few messages quickly. Kokajo is saying there's difference between access to justice and justice itself. Most of what we have seen in the judiciary are judgments passed, not justice. Aloysius Anderson is saying the Citizens Manifesto focuses on what the citizens want and forgot to highlight some of the gains that have been made in the previous Citizens Manifesto in 2017-2018 by this government, and we must mention them. Well, we have mentioned them. Andrew has gone through some of them. Brahma Yaya Kamara is saying, can Andrew tell us the difference between Citizens Manifesto and the SLPP's new Direction Manifesto? Talking about the control of corruption sounds to me like a mere statement. This deceptive document is a scam. Sierra Leoneans are going to vote this government, okay? National cohesion is an issue. Catherine I is saying, Musa Kroma is saying, the government needs to create technology or pay app directly to government account for customers to all government entities. George Owell is saying, okay, I'm skipping that. Samuel, why the study was so focused in the Northern District? Which study? That is not too clear. I don't understand. We need cashless means of payments just like Alipay, Google Pay. The banks need to add or bring money ATM machines, not just traffic lights, but street lights as well. I'm going to take 3 more messages. Abdul Fufana is saying it's a shame. Okay, I'm skipping that. We're not replacing the police with traffic lights, in my view, will not solve the problems of corruption, but rather worsen crimes like horrific traffic offenses and other pedestrian offenses. Give the police better salary, housing, and good living. Equip the force with better training. Supply traffic and public lights with body cameras that they should use on duty, and levy penalties for the offenders. Let's stop casting blames on corruption on the police, forgetting MPs who, in my take, are the worst corrupt citizens in Sierra Leone. Gilo Fode is saying that. Bashir Loksin Mustafa is saying civil society organizations are crucial for the achievement of sustainable development goals, for democratization, for the defense of human rights, and for the protection of the environment. They hold governments and businesses to account and help to make sure no one is left behind by the government. However, the civic space is shrinking in Sierra Leone. This ranges from increasingly restrictive legislations and administrative hurdles being put in place to smear campaigns and political persecution of activists in our country. The document is in place. If only they follow up. Samuel, good work. Right, James Senesi is saying, in the area of job experience, we have the National Youth Service. I went through this program and today I'm a proud lecturer. Okay? The very journalists are the one bringing division among political parties. For example, there are discussions on national interests on the police, and Samuel is Siraji about APC, but I'm glad Siraji answered. That's not so clear, but thank you. That's the beauty of democracy. The things that are killing Sierra Leoneans are corruption, high places. If that one is gotten rid of, then it will be very easy to deal with the smaller corruption. Interesting. Okay, we have so many messages here, but unfortunately, time will not permit us to go through all of them, and some are not worthy to read. Like I always do at the start of this program, we admonish you, we beg you to please tailor your comments to the issues being discussed. And I'm going to allow quickly Andrew from the submissions from both Siraji and Imran. What would you want to put forward?
I think I am enjoying this conversation. I think for the moments that I've been coming to AYV, this to me is one of the most frank conversations I'm getting from SLPP and APC. And I really want to thank both Siraji and Imran. From what we've been talking about, clearly there's an opportunity for government and citizens to co-create solutions. So those 6 manifesto commitment that citizens said, we don't want to throw that on the street. Citizens are saying, we too know the need, we understand the need to live in a clean environment. We want to contribute to that. And I'm happy about what I'm hearing, that for that to be realized, there is a need for an investment in the infrastructure to ensure that happens. So what we are talking about is, we are not just highlighting a wish list. We do know that there is need for an infrastructure to be available. But I think what we need, what we need first and foremost is to inculcate that character. I've seen some people, people that have imbibed a kind of culture that I won't throw dirt on the street. I've seen some of them in other countries where they don't mind keeping the dirt in their hands, even if it means walking for 2-3 hours, because they are just wired not to throw dirt on the street. So we want to see a Sierra Leone where citizens can inculcate that as well. But clearly, the 6 commitments that citizens have proffered, to me, is a demonstration of our understanding that we know that the pressures that politicians are going through. When we say we don't want to beg politicians, know that people have the wherewithal, not that people have the means, but we know that we need some extra effort. We need to make some extra sacrifice for governance to work. We cannot continue like this. I mean, the young lady that I just told the story about, hopping from one city to another, running after politicians, ended up in an accident. We're happy that it was not fatal. But the reality is, if we do not change culture from the demand side, if we just continue to demand institutional reform from the supply side, we don't think this will work. So to me, so when we mention these 6 things, I saw Sirajin going after one after the other. It's really an integrated approach. The 6 from government side and the 6 from the citizen side. It's really an integrated approach. We know that many things need to be done about Sierra Leone, but what the manifesto has done is to identify just a few issues, just a few. We cannot throw that on the street. We'll stop begging politicians. In the catalogue of institutional reform, I don't think those things really come to mind. And this really brings me to my final point that I want to make. Too often, donors fund civil society. But the benefit of civil society work, it's really for government and for governance. So I'm not saying that the next administration funds IGR, but there's a clear opportunity for government and the next administration and civil society to co-create solutions. So let's say you want to invest in, public education campaign or behavior change, or we saw through under, I think it was NPRC, the neighborhood watches, what they called the NASMOS at the time. It was very efficient. So I think what the politics of Sierra Leone has become so toxic that political parties, apart from mobilizing citizens as voters, they're actually failing to mobilize citizens as citizens to develop, to support development and growth. So I think what is needed is for government, the next administration, to actually put funding aside. There is no harm for government to fund civil society.
All right.
So as long as it doesn't mean, you going to trumpet a particular political persuasion, but if it means supporting behavior change, which is really needed, what is needed, I think this is one clear opportunity for partnership between civil citizens and the next administration.
All right, quickly, Siraji.
Yes.
The final bite.
Yeah, I think I want to thank Andrew once more again and want to assure viewers that what has been listed in the perception or the
Citizens
Manifesto. Of course, I was saying that maybe he captured a lot of, like somebody misunderstood that, why is it the northern part that was captured, maybe because maybe these messages are all over there now and people know them. But I must assure you that unlike the pessimism that my brother Imran put up, I will not say this is a new APC, but we've learned from the mistakes and we're still learning. And we are putting a document. We are not just putting a document that is of lip service, but definitely we're going to concrete it with action. And definitely, in as much as we know the problems are already there, like you talk about Western area, they talk about water, and still a challenge. I think this time I will need to make a conscious effort. It's not just about the party, but even the country. Because when you look at other countries and you go where they are like desert, semi-desert areas, and the tap never gets locked for anything, then here we have superabundance of water, yet we cannot manage it, So I just want to assure people that the APC is getting readier and steadier than before. All right. And we're ready to take back State House, and we're going to create a judicious, good governance for all to enjoy.
Quickly, Imran.
Well, I feel very excited going forward because, and I hope that your platforms, so it's not only OIV, but the other platforms as well, would keep the tone of this debate going forward. So, then joke posting for and I go, no. It has to be on issues, yeah? Because it is these issues that ultimately would affect the lives of 7 million people in this country, yeah? It's about what are their plans, right, for infrastructural development? What are their plans on energy? What are their plans on education? What are their plans on water, right? That is what we should be talking about. So frame this debate. And IGR, by my count, I think 2,400 respondents, 800 stakeholders, 44 civil society organizations, including my friends from Campaign for Good Governance, They are there, part of the 44, my very good friends. Yeah, so it's a total of 3,244. Quite an exhaustive job that they have done nationwide. And this should inform us all for every single debate that we're going to have between now and the elections. Can I just say on funding the
quickly, please,
civil society organizations? Look, I think Andrew and others have an opportunity. There is a framework set which has been headed by His Excellency the Vice President. Those desires and requests and conversations you can have face-to-face with government after an election, right? And I'm sure government will not be opposed. I mean, we have done so for Sludge, yeah?
Thank you.
We have also increased their hallelujah on a yearly basis.
Thank you.
Right? And I think we would want to do so going forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Imran Sillah. And thank you very much, Andrew Lavalley and Honorable Sir Haji Rollins Kamara. It's been a pleasure having all three of you here, gentlemen. And well, this is where we end tonight's conversation. The show has been AYV on Sunday. My name is Samuel Weisbanger, and up next is our AYV Primetime News. Until then, take care of yourself and have a lovely night.